So, how long till we stop giving Blake Gideon excuses?
You are Locked On Georgia Tech, your daily podcast on the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome into Locked On Georgia Tech. I am one of your hosts, Caleb Johnson. Wasn't smart enough to get into Georgia Tech, but I am smart enough to talk about Georgia Tech sports. Taking this daily journey with me, covering the Yellow Jackets, is my co-host, Jarvis Davis. Look, he's been covering Atlanta sports for the last 15 years, so the man is plenty knowledgeable to talk about Georgia Tech. I want to start off by saying thank you for making Locked On Georgia Tech your first listen of the day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. We're free and available wherever you download your podcast, wherever you go to download them. Make sure you leave us a 5-star review. Anything less than I wish all the food that you eat tastes as bland as a plain varsity hot dog. Yuck. No one wants that. Today on the show, we're going to get into did Jarvis and I get Mack Rhodes fired? Also, how can Georgia Tech improve in the red zone? But first, does Blake Gideon have the tools that he needs, Jarvis, in order to be successful this time around against a bad team, or are we going to see another high-scoring affair?
Yeah, man, there's no excuse. He has all the tools on the back end of his defense, and Gilmore and Amari Harvey. Those guys are back in the fold. And when you think about what Amari Harvey brings to the table, he's a veteran guy. He's been around. He's one of those guys. I remember Brent Key talking about how Amari Harvey is one of the more tougher DBs he's ever coached. And that's saying a lot coming from a guy like Brent Key. So I think that, when you think about it from that aspect, Blake Gideon when you have experienced DBs back into the fold, your guys that are the guys that know what they're doing, know what they're supposed to do, know where they're supposed to be, and know what they're supposed to do in certain coverages, and you understand, hey, I know where these guys are going to have success when I call certain plays or I come up with a certain type of game plan to stop a team like Boston College. It gives the DC more options. Like, you can play a little bit more man coverage, probably, right? Like, you can throw a couple of different pressures to maybe force some turnovers, because that's been a department that Georgia Tech hasn't been that good in. So when you think about it from that aspect, I feel like this is a type of game where I would call it a tune-up game. Brent Key would never call it a tune-up game because, hey, this is ACC. Anybody can be beat, blah, blah, blah. All those cliches, one game at a time, blah, 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 blah. But, hey, I'm going to tell you right now, Boston College is a tune-up game because we already know what next week brings. Pitt, and that's going to be a game. Pitt can put up some points, and Georgia Tech can put up some points. And we know what happened a week and a half ago or 2 weeks ago when they ran up on a team that can put up some points. And you don't want to get yourself in a shootout with that team and, potentially be looking on the outside looking in, or be in a situation where, like, are we going to get into this conference championship or not? You don't want to put yourself in that situation. So you use this game when you got your guys back, when you got your guys healthy, because during the bye week, we talked about, hey, you're going to get healthy. Health is wealth. We talked about that. When you have your guys back into the fold, it opens up the playbook. You can do a lot more things. You can get a little exotic. You can put some pressure on BC quarterback Lonigan. So when you think about it from that aspect, like, Blake Gideon should be smiling at this point.
Yeah, no, we talked on our last show. We did the crossover with AJ, and they weren't exactly sure what direction necessarily that Boston College was going to go at quarterback. We do know now for sure that they're going with Dylan Lonigan. And I think, the benefit of that is, hey, this is a guy who has shown you he will turn the ball over. He has that inexperience. Even it's crazy. Like, even with him being in that Alabama system for as long as he was, to kind of see these tendencies show, like, this is the opportunity for you to not have what happened against CJ Bailey, where, I mean, can we please witness a game that it doesn't have busted coverage, where guys, are going shrieking down the field, and you're looking around going, like, who was supposed to guard him? Like, because it felt like it was no one out there. It felt like he was just out there by himself. And to your point, you mentioned the fact that Jai Gilmore and Amari Harvey are back. I think, Savion Riley being amongst that list as well, because depth on this team is certainly a factor. And so having your seniors out there who are going to play, the meaningful snaps, but then having depth get to be depth and not guys who we talk about, and players do all the time, that next man up mentality. But no one really wants to have the next man up mentality. What they want to have is everybody be healthy. And that's how, you've ended up where, the only player that's going to be missing this week for Georgia Tech is the long snapper. And so, and no offense, but, like, no one needs to know his name, as long as he does the job correctly. People are going to know Jai Gilmore's name. They are going to know Amari Harvey's name, because these are going to be the guys who were making big plays out there. To your point, Jarvis, like you mentioned earlier, the fact that the turnovers have been essentially a non-factor for this team. I didn't realize it was as bad as what you pointed out until you pull up these numbers and look in the ACC. 17th, bottom of the conference, is where Georgia Tech is right now in interceptions, and you hope having these secondary guys is going to change that, right?
Yes. I mean, and here's the thing. Not only getting the DBs back, I talk about being able to play at different coverages. And the one thing that really stood out to me with CJ Bailey was, like, he was comfortable in the pocket.
Yes.
Meaning
with one leg.
Yes, with one leg. He was on one leg and he looked super comfortable in the pocket. Meaning the defensive line, they got to come to play, man. Like, these are the games where you're supposed to be meeting at the quarterback. Hey, man, I'm about to get there. Like, you're supposed to be having a party, literally. Because when you talk about, a quarterback that turns, like, that has the propensity to turn the ball over, you have to take advantage of that. Only way he's going to potentially turn it over is that you put pressure on him. And you want to be able to put pressure on him by your guys up front. Jordan Vandenberg, all of these guys, like, those guys, he has to lead that charge, because when you talk about the ball being run down your throat and quarterback sitting there all day just chilling and rolling out the pocket, rolling out left and getting that breaking containment with so much ease. Brent Key talked about this week about how he wants the guys to set the edge. Yeah. And that means you really becoming a force and being able to say, hey, man, this is my area. I'm going to close this area off for you. And, oh, God forbid you try to roll outside on me and try to bootleg out and try to get outside the pocket and make a play downfield. No, not today. I'm going to get off this block. I'm gonna hold what I got right here, and once I figure out that you're passing the ball, I'm about to get off this block and come get you. And I think that's all on the defensive line. Like, it's great to have the DBs back. That's a huge addition to this defense, and that's great for Blake Gideon as a defense coordinator for this team. But, man, this defensive line, it starts up front, man. Those guys have to set that edge. If it's a run, man, get off that doggone, hold what you got, hold your gap. And as soon as that ball carrier gets close to you, you snap that doggone offensive lineman off you and you make that tackle. But if he drop back the pass, man, they have to get after it. And that's the only way you make bad teams look bad.
Yeah, I think having Matt Alexander also be healthy, is kind of a part of that list. I mean, just a host of guys who are going to be back for Georgia Tech who have been banged up in one way or another. And so, from that inside out, I know Alexander not a guy that's going to create a ton of pressure necessarily on the inside, But it helps when you're playing your top guys rather than you're having to go to your depth and guys who aren't making a factor. But I think, kind of just wrapping this up, Jarvis, is just the thought of I'm curious how much blame Blake Gideon gets for his defensive philosophy and, needing to, even now that you do have a healthy team, okay, you need to see something, and especially against Boston College, it needs to show up. But when you don't have that depth, how creative can you get, otherwise, that clearly they weren't able to do against an NC State? I think it's one where, maybe in year one, too quick to put any direct blame. But something that Jarvis, you and I talked about off the air before the show was just the simple fact that I hear Buster Faulkner's name a ton around this university. I do not hear people talk about Blake Gideon, and I guess it kind of surprises me. But on the other hand, you go, well, things aren't going well. Maybe the man doesn't want his name brought up in the media.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you have to understand what he's working with, right? Like, we know that.
Sure.
I joked about, hey man, I know what position group they're going to be looking at once this portal and all this recruiting gets going. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's going to be, we know where they're going to focus on. And Brent Key even hinted at it. He's like, yeah, man, we want to get bigger. What's the first thing that guy up the street up 316 said when he first got hired? We have to get bigger.
Yep.
And they understand it, man, because it all starts up front on both sides of football. I know people fall in love with quarterbacks and the wide receivers, 6'4", 225, running 4'3", all that stuff. Yeah, you can fall in love with all that. But what you need to start falling in love with is them big uglies. Specifically on offensive line, because I play defensive line, so I've never been ugly. You know what I'm saying? Like, I never let anyone call me big ugly.
I love that.
You can call me big nasty, you can call me two gapper, like Mr. Run Stopper, all that stuff. But you're not gonna call me ugly. But it starts with those guys, because those guys are the foundation. You can't build a foundation of a house with doors and windows. You know what I'm saying? Like, those doors and windows, they can look real nice. Those quarterbacks, doors and windows, the quarterbacks and wide receivers, they look real nice, man. If you got some nice doors and windows, it make a house look wonderful. But oh my gosh, if that foundation ain't worth a flip, and I'm not saying they are, you know what I'm saying? Because that offensive line, solid, man. But when it comes to the other side of the football, there's some room to improve over there. And I think Brent Key understands that. And I think that Blake Gideon is going to have to manufacture some pressure because I don't care who BC has at quarterback. If they have time, they're probably going to have some success.
All right, Jarvis. Well, let's start next by going into the other side of the ball. We have spent a lot of time talking about how good this offense has been, but there's been one area that's a little off. How can Georgia Tech improve in the red zone? It's almost the weekend. Time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order. These players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. Well, obviously, Georgia Tech didn't play last week, but the week before, Haynes King delivered in a big way, over 400 yards passing, 100 yards rushing. He should likely be able to replicate that on Saturday, especially, Boston College. They haven't been good at anything. When the pressure was on, he came through, no hesitation, no delay. And if you've been watching week after week, this performance certainly wasn't a fluke. Haynes King has been on a streak. And just like Haynes delivered for Georgia Tech, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you save every Saturday you order. Stack it up all season, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through 11/18. We want to thank you guys for making Locked On Georgia Tech your first listen of the day, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. One area that it's kind of weird, Jarvis. Georgia Tech is number 1 in the ACC when it comes to scoring in the red zone, but it feels like there can be some improvement, some tweaks to making this red zone offense even better.
Yeah, I think that when you look at that thing, that just lets you know where the level of expectations are. We talked about the defense and how no one really talks about, Blake Gideon. Like some people out there listening, like, who is Blake Gideon? He's a defensive
Right.
coordinator for your football
Yeah.
team. You know what I'm saying?
And that's not even it's crazy too, Jarvis, because when you don't hear of one side of the ball, you tend to assume, oh, okay, so the head coach just coaches that side of the ball. And then you're like, no. Brinky's an offensive lineman guy. Like that's so it's wild that we don't talk more about him. But go ahead, sorry.
But no, I was just gonna say, when you think about that aspect of it, like there are high expectations for this offense, right? You got a Maxwell Award semifinalist. He's a finalist in my eyes. He should be, and potential Heisman candidate in Haynes King. So yeah, that raises my expectations. That raises the level. Okay, who's calling the plays? If you got that good of a quarterback, Buster Faulkner's calling the plays. Oh, Buster Faulkner's in some conversations with some teams about potentially being a head coach.
Right.
Yep, that's true. It's a reason why he averaged 36 points a game. Yeah, hey man, hey, come on down over here to Gainesville or to Tallahassee.
Mm-hmm.
Like those are the type of things that happen when you do well. So for me, I'm not surprised. I wasn't surprised at all when Coach Key was talking about this in his presser earlier in the week. He was saying how we're good at getting threes, but we need to turn those threes into sevens, especially when you have the issues with your defense and you get into shootouts. Remember that game that I was talking about that Coach don't want to talk about? It's coming up next week against Pitt. Yeah, that could be one of those games. So the offense has to be on point. They has to be dang near perfect when it comes to, especially when you get in the red zone. That means you can't get those penalties. You can't not execute. You can't miss that block that you were supposed to pick up, and he ends up breaking through and getting a tackle for loss. All those things can't happen because, like I said, the expectations are higher for this side of the football. So in order for them to be able to do that against a team like BC, like I said, go back to this is a tune-up game. These are the things that you need to work on. You got Malik Rutherford healthy. You got Jordan Allen, the freshman wide receiver from the state of Georgia, who has been coming along lately for you. He talked about getting more involved in the offense, and just to see somebody up there 18 years old, like being able to make that very clear to the media, that it made me smile a little bit, but there are some, Faulkner has the tools. That's what I'm saying. Isaiah Canyon, you brought him up. I think he's a great candidate to have one of those games against BC. And then once everybody starts eating, everybody's going to want to eat more, and it's easier for you to do that once you put it out on tape, because the more good tape you put out there, it's more what the next defensive coordinator has to prepare for. And when you start to have that success in the red zone, not having those penalties, executing whatever the play call is, if you question Buster Faulkner down in the red zone, if those guys up there executing up front, it don't matter what he calls. And this is the game for you to go out there and do that. Like, because the more you do that, the more you put that good tape out there, like I said, it's going to give that defensive coordinator the one at Pitt and the one up 316. They're going to have a lot to prepare for. And the more they have to prepare for is the more they have to think. And as defensive coordinator, I don't want my players thinking. Like most of the time, all the smart guys play offense,
Right.
especially up front, like, hey man, like you don't want your guys in a situation where it's just like, man, we got like 25 plays that they had a lot of success with. and they're gonna throw some different formations at you, but it's probably gonna be the same play. That's what Buster Fulton played quarterback at Valdosta State. That was their big thing. They used to run probably about 5 or 6 plays, but man, they used to throw them bad boys at you in so many different formations. And they used to just tear your butt up because you were like, okay, this is the same look. This is a different look. But so you think something else coming, but essentially it's the same thing that was coming to you before. It's just it just looks different. And I think that, Buster Faulkner does a really good job with that, with all the motions and everything like that. So I think that those guys in the red zone scoring those touchdowns, because those scoring plays are what those defense coordinators look at. And I think that if they're able to do that, if they're able to execute more, I feel like BC is the perfect game for them to work on those things and perfect them as they get ready to go into a game the following week against Pitt.
Yeah, well, I was about to say, because like the thing about this red zone offense for Georgia Tech is it's been really good as far as just scoring across the. If all the concern is, hey, we just need to score the ball, they've been really impressive. The only 2 times they've gotten into the red zone this year that they didn't score points was one time against Clemson, and then another time when they were running out the clock against Syracuse. The other good part of this is Boston College. Their defense absolutely stinks against stopping teams in the red zone.
Yes.
I saw they are 101st out of 136 teams in the FBS at red zone defense. They have given up 34 scores in the red zone out of 39 chances of teams getting in the red zone. 27 of those were touchdowns. That's 110th nationally out of 136 programs. So the good news is if Georgia Tech gets it in the red zone, they very likely will be able to score on this defense. But, as Jarvis, as you and I have been talking, like, this isn't about Boston College. This is far more about putting together a comfortability, putting together that confidence, showing what you can do as you go to face your last 2 opponents of the regular season. And the other part too that I just kind of look back on is when Georgia Tech has struggled in the red zone, these have been games that have been way too close for comfort, because your defense wasn't doing enough, and your opponent was scoring. And so when you look at, your Duke, where you went 1 of 2 in the red zone, your Wake Forest, where you went 3 of 6 scoring touchdowns in the red zone, like, it is just, as you mentioned, like, Brent Key kind of really honed in on its execution. They got to make it happen. Otherwise, you're going to be playing in some uncomfortable games, and that's ultimately where the Yellow Jackets don't want to be. But that's the serious stuff, Jarvis. Let's maybe end the show on something a little more lighthearted. I mean, at least for us, because we're not the ones that got fired. We're not the ones that stepped down. But did we maybe have some bad juju in getting Mack Rhodes let go? The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or you want to ride the hot hand, and I mean, lately, if you want to ride the hot hand, it's been Vit Krejci, because the man, it seems, cannot miss from 3-point. FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. And here lately for the Hawks, it feels like they haven't necessarily had to make late pushes because they've been blowing some teams out, especially out on the West Coast. So you definitely want to look for that FanDuel action when it comes to the Hawks. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Jarvis, did we get a man fired this week? Because what a incredibly weird situation to come out after we ripped Mack Rhodes to pieces earlier in the week because of his incompetence and the way that he talked about Georgia Tech. But then this scandalous story is coming out of Baylor and the CFP.
Yeah, man, this is very interesting because, I'm a firm believer in seeing through mess, right? Because
Yeah.
like what Mark Rose was talking about, Mac Rose, excuse me, what he was talking about. Matter of fact, I'm gonna call you Mark. You don't need to be called by your regular name, Mark Rose. Your name is Mark now. Like the way he was talking about Tech and how they got dominated on both sides of football. Then he doubled down on it. The second week when the rankings came out, it was just so weird. And you know what? When you say weird stuff, you're probably doing weird things. And I think him stepping down from as the chair of the playoff committee, it just confirms what I was thinking and what I was feeling. It's so fitting that this would come out right after everybody was calling him out. And then, we may have had something to do with it, but I wouldn't take the blame for him losing his job. He was the one that was out here doing God knows what,
Well,
you know.
That's the whole thing is Jarvis. It's like, heavy is the head that wears the crown. And this man was,
Oh, yes, it's heavy.
well, he was, obviously he was the spokesperson. He was the face of the CFP committee. And after, making some decisions that were probably, well, not probably, they were quite questionable. But us acknowledging the TV show aspect of all of this, well, there's some more TV drama to be had because there was a report that came out, earlier that he had yelled at a player because he was serving as the athletic director at Baylor and apparently yelled at a player or something. There was some weird stuff that was going on. And so when Ross Dellinger originally put out this report, it was that he was stepping down as the athletic director at Baylor for personal reasons. And then Jarvis, I'm telling you, man, this was a good drama throughout the day because every time Ross Dellinger sent out a new tweet, we got a little bit more and a little bit more. And when it came out that there were new allegations, I'll read directly from Ross Dellinger's tweet. New allegations surfacing this week regarding Baylor AD Mack Rhodes are related to a violation of the faith-based university policies and practices. Baylor is declining comment as this involves a personal matter and an ongoing investigation.
Sir, I need for you not to be in the limelight with all these positions on TV, running your mouth about other schools and what they got going on. And you sitting back here doing all this extra stuff. That's what we're gonna call it. Extra stuff. You're just doing extra stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I'll say this. There was a particular situation with the Boston Celtics a few years back, and their head coach.
How can we forget?
And everybody was furious because that man had a really famous significant other that people could not believe he would dare not be faithful to. And I don't know if this is what Mack Rhodes is being accused of, but when a Christian university says, hey, you have violated our faith-based university policies, and this is a personal matter, and we're investigating it. I mean, Jarvis, I'm putting two and two together, man. It sounds like Buddy was doing something.
He's stepping out somewhere. Hey, man. Hey, I'm not one to judge, but something ain't right. And he's dealing with those consequences. But you know what, Mark? That's what you get for talking about Tech.
Well,
talking crazy about Tech. if you were saying some stuff that was true, oh, they had a little bit too close a game, Wake Forest.
Yeah.
Oh, that Clemson win doesn't look as good as they did initially. Okay.
You hear him
All
out.
right, whatever. But being dominated on both sides of the football.
Yeah. When literally your quarterback counted for 500 yards of offense
By himself.
So for
Make
the
it make
people,
sense?
yeah, for the people who are curious, I will say they have already added a new CFP committee chair. It is now the Arkansas athletic director, Hunter Yurachek.
Okay.
So that's great, right?
They
Now we
added
got an
another
SEC guy.
member too. They added another member.
They did.
The Utah AD, Mark
Yeah.
Harlan.
Yes.
Utah was for some reason was in front of Tech.
They were. Yeah. No,
They beat the children of the
Jarvis,
poor.
like from the aspect of you
Wyoming.
replacing one Big 12 with another Big 12, I guess.
I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I'm at a point now. Can we just go back to the BCS?
Right.
Can we go back to
It's
computer?
crazy.
I
never
mean,
thought I would say that.
I want to go back to the computers.
Mhm.
12 teams, that's cool. I'll go 16, I guess, whatever. Just give me BCS, man. Like, put it in the computer, put it in Claude and see what pops out. Hey, man, you know what I'm saying? Like, if we're
That's
going
the
to do
whole
that,
thing,
let's
Jarvis.
do that. Just do it.
Yeah, well, because it's already easy for us to get mad at AI these days.
Yeah.
That's the easy old man yelling at cloud sort of thing.
Right.
I
Yeah.
would much rather go back to yelling at computers and getting upset than having, human error strongly be a part of this, especially when that human error is also committing other human error. I'm just saying.
A lot of errors.
Just saying.
Yes.
All right.
Oh, yes. Before we go,
Okay.
all the listeners and viewers, people, I'll be live after the Boston College game, So as soon as the game is over with, come to the YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe, hit that like button so you can get a notification, hit that bell. You get a notification from when I go live. So, we're going to do a nice little post game. So make sure you check that out for sure.
Yeah, absolutely want to take a look at that. That's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Georgia Tech. We'll be able to talk to you guys post game after Georgia Tech and Boston College. And then we'll talk to you, of course, next week, all week, breaking down what happened and then preparing for Georgia Tech to take on Pitt. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube, anywhere you listen to the podcast for free. Follow the show on social media, Locked On Georgia Tech. Also follow Jarvis at JarvisD90. I'm at ATL Johnson 18. Thanks for making Locked On Georgia Tech your first listen today. For your second listen, check out Locked On ACC. Kenton Gibbs and Alex Donna break down the most interesting conference in college sports, from the rivalries to the championship and every game in between. Find Locked On ACC on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. For Locked On Georgia Tech, y'all have a good one.